Hello everybody, so I'm back, and this will be kind of the first non-pleading video of this next generation of videos, and I thought we'd start things off with kind of an explanation of why we design things the way we do, and why do things look the way they do, because it is very simplistic, I think, compared to what you'll find on other channels, but in that regard, we take a certain amount of pride in that simplicity, I guess you could say, because we think that it's a little closer to the way Lego used to be, when there weren't a lot of specialized parts and everything was highly reconfigurable because you were using the same parts over and over again, but in different creative ways. And most of that is rooted in the road plates. And the scale of Lego cities is been changing over the years as these road plates have changed. So I can find a section without a lot of traffic. Here we go. This is a great example. So this is a classic road plate in that, well, A, it's considered classic sized. It doesn't have the rounded corners. It doesn't have that bike lane sort of look to it. And the lanes are, well, they're probably, I don't know, what do you think, maybe about, well, if they were 8 studs, they would be that wide. So they've got to be about 7. Sorry, I'm kind of in a dark corner of the town here, but this just happened to be where I was standing. So as the Legos evolved, they started going more to this style of vehicle that has kind of a wider aspect to it. This is actually 6 stud wide, even though it looks like it's 4. The wheel arches add another stud on each side. And so that became kind of a thing. And as opposed to like a more classic Lego car, which would be this size, which is 4 studs with the wheels tightly set into that 4 stud layout. And then of course from this size, they went to what you'll find on a lot of the newer sets, which I don't actually have any here I can show you, which are the much larger cars. And they're, I don't know, they're probably 8 studs wide. And they're big on detailing, and they have their own appeal because of that. But since most of these road plates, or at least the initial batch of these road plates, date back to when I was a child, back in the 80s, I started to add on to that town with my own kids more road plates that were classic sized. Well, once you have classic sized road plates, you can't have larger vehicles because they won't physically fit in the between the lines. So, you know, we started developing variations on classic cars and, you know, trying to keep everything in that 4 wide aesthetic, I guess we'll call it, or the design language of a 4 wide vehicle. And in doing that, we came up with a lot of different ways of making vehicles that still looked, 4 wide, but they kind of fit the different types of vehicles that you would see in a city. Like that. And then of course some of our larger vehicles are technically 6 wide because of the wheel arches, but they look like 4 wide vehicles. So like these buses, which I really like these buses a lot. And that was inspired partly by this original Lego set, which is of course a 4 wide truck. There's another original Lego 4 wide truck there, that blue one kind of hiding. So using those as inspiration, we continued to develop 4 wide vehicles that would fit the aesthetic of this town. Now, that's not to say everything is 4 wide. We do have a couple larger ones, like this semi here, which I don't know if you can quite see. It's probably about 7 or 8. And of course we have this Octan set. We actually have 2 of these, but this is the only one that's in one piece. And it's easily 6 wide. Well, no, it's actually 8 because of the handles on the truck. But, but it still kind of fits with the old classic Lego 4 wide trucks. And then, like this is like a motorhome, which is kind of just like those buses. It's 4 wide, but it's really technically 6 because of the arches. But it looks like it's 4 wide. And then here's another example here of a 4 wide I mean, we still count it as 4 wide despite the wheel arches. And it's sort of a, I'm not really sure we've decided what it is. It could be a number of things. So once you're committed to that 4 wide vehicle size, that determines the scale of a lot of other things. Now, of course, we also had, classic buildings like the fire station and post office, and motorcycle shop, things like that. So those were all kind of their own scale. And then we had like the police station, which was, is actually built on a 4 wide plate, the original set, which looked like just this bit, really. And I took a couple of those and combined them. And so now it's sort of like a mega police station. This actually is the backside of the original set. The original police station is kind of hiding here in the front. And there's a video of that somewhere. The original police station only went about this far. It had 1 jail cell, 2 garages, and then it had this bit, but it was pushed back probably about here. So yeah, we've upgraded that police station quite a bit. But tried to make it look like it had been added onto by a real town that was actually expanding their police station, not just a whole new set. So that's why the original set is still buried in there and discernible. We'll probably do the same thing with the fire station at some point, just for laughs. And we certainly did that with the racetrack. That's actually 2 racetrack sets that have been built into one gigantic racetrack. But the 4 wide streets then lend themselves to buildings that are also somewhere around, well, I guess 6 if by the time you count the windows and then the walls on either side, like here, because the streetscape becomes this size, right? So it's 9 studs from the edge of the road to the end of that plate. Now, if you have 2 plates together, and they both have streets, which this doesn't, this is a T intersection, but if it came through all the way, it would be about here. So yeah, now you're kind of defined with how big the building can get and still fit on that block. And that's why, like this is a newer set, but it's sized very much like a traditional set. That's why these buildings that are about 6 deep, just like that, and just like the apartment over there, although it's actually 7, but they're kind of in that 6 to 8 deep size is sort of the traditional classic style Lego. So given the classic sized roads, which kind of required us to have classic sized cars, and when we went to make new vehicles, we made all those new vehicles in those same classic sort of appearance and dimensions. Like these are not Lego sets, these are mocks. These are our own creations. Let's call that the A-Team van, because it looks sort of like the A-Team. But as you are developing cars, now you've developed, now your buildings need to match that scale. So there's a few exceptions. This is a little bit bigger. But for the most part, everything in our town is that same classic scale. And for some people, they find that very charming. They think it's really cool. It's certainly a lot easier to build because it doesn't take anywhere near as many parts to make a classic size building as opposed to one of these really fancy buildings you see nowadays that are like the modular ones. But it also lends itself to having a lot of diversity in a very small space because none of these buildings are particularly large. So for example, I gotta find where it is now because I think we moved it. Oh yeah, here we go. So I don't know if you can quite see it there. It's kind of dark. I gotta get better lights in here. This is a 2-story shop, and it's the Tech Man. This is a Tech Man on his sign, which hangs over the road, which I think is kind of cool. And the Tech Man, of course, has his own Tech Man van, and he's sort of like a computer support kind of guy. Goes places to fix your computers, and you can buy computer stuff from him. But there we have a building with parking and a 2-story, shop, and it takes up almost no space. I mean, it's smaller than a modern Lego car would be. And if you can see at the top, you can count the studs, however many it is. It's at the cornice, it's 7 deep. I'm not going to count how many along it is, but it can't be more than about 20. So actually, we can do it on the front real easy because the windows are 4 each, right? So it's 10, it's about 10. So that's pretty cool that you can have something that compact and it's a whole business and a residence for this guy, right? That's the advantage of the classic styles. You can put a lot of stuff in a very small area. The downside is you don't get a lot of detail on any one thing, but then the detail comes from, you know, these little vignettes, which Tyler used to set up all the time, like the scorpions eating this guy. You know, we took a snack bar set and give it like a whole veranda and sign and party lights and stuff like that. Like, you can add details without making the buildings larger. And I think that's a really neat effect. So as we go through, you know, answering your questions or things that you're looking into that you're curious about, I just want you to be aware of why you're seeing everything is in this smaller scale, and it's very deliberate. We're not going to make big, fancy, detailed stuff. We do sort of this design that like requires your imagination to fill in the details, because it gives you a lot more capability in a small space. And I would encourage you to consider it for yourself. I mean, look how many cars we have jammed to the streets here, and it really doesn't take that many pieces to come up with this wide variety of traffic, because they're all 4 wide. And they don't use anything that's particularly difficult to find. So that's a strong suit. I mean, really, to be honest, the hardest pieces to find generally are these wheel arch pieces, which we, you know, had to order here and there, and the doors. I always thought it was odd that we had doors on both sides of a vehicle that only has 1 seat, but there you go. Anyway, so that is kind of the, you know, how this developed and why we've stuck to this 4 wide scale for the entire town, and hopefully you find that as interesting as I do. But just to show you, like this building is completely empty. We've never furnished this building. So that might be something we get into in another video. And it's probably I think that's the newest building in town, is that one. So it's a little bit bigger. That's really all I had to say. Is I just kind of wanted to set the ground rules for why certain things looked the way they looked, because I know that it looks kind of foreign to a lot of you who are used to the newer Lego styles, because this is probably I don't know, it's about 40 years ago that this scale, this type of Lego was really in fashion and available in the stores. And we kept it very, very deliberately. We wanted to keep everything this size. And I think it works really well, especially when you're trying to fit it into a basement like we are. I mean, we have like a full port, full airport, neighborhoods, downtown areas. I mean, we have a lot jammed into a pretty small space. Well, there you go. So we'll be talking more about that. And I'll be cleaning up the town as we go. Little things that have been knocked around. So like, share, and subscribe, as they say, and watch some of the old videos. Help us out. And if you see anything you want to know more about, by all means, drop me a note in the comments and we'll talk about it. Thank you. Goodbye.